normally you want to start in the area where it's most likely to look weakest. So that's the corner. Okay, so put one out in there. Are we doing a staggered row of these, are we?
I think a single row of those.
Single row,
Yeah,
okay.
I've got more polys than
These
Bellas.
haven't rooted in as extensively
Yeah.
as some of the others. Right? So you can judge it by eye. Okay? I didn't measure it, but that's what you do. If you're not sure, just do this. Okay? And then you put them in, you do the edge first. Normally we would do it that distance from the side when we've got a gutter in grass or something like that. It doesn't really matter here because this is a tight bound edge. We can plant almost right up to it. It can spill out onto a little bit without any real problem. Okay? So you've got to work out what your spacings are. Try and get the best specimens to be in view. Check it if you're not sure any time. See, I'm a bit short there. Keep checking it. And you get a nice strong line. Okay? So you work all your way up there and equally all the way along that way. Now it's really important that you put all of the plants into the bed, onto the outside, before you plant it up. Don't think, I'll plant and I'll go, and I'll plant and I'll go. Every year there's somebody who thinks, no, what does Mick know? You know, he's only been in the business 35 years, you know, I've been in this 5 minutes, I know what I'm doing. And there's just someone who will then think, I'm going to plant as I go. And their bed has loads and loads of problems, and we all end up having to help them at the end. Okay? Set them out
me,
first. Okay? It is, you might think, yeah, he's just saying that, but it's true. Set them out, it doesn't waste any time whatsoever.
No.
You can be all doing, as long as you're using this measure, because if I said I was about the span of your fingers, which is what I generally use, okay, some people's hands are little, some people are big, and you get different spacing. So just measure it out according to the trowel, put them all the way out, and I will just demonstrate just on the corner one, just to make the point about how we plant them. Planting motion is a bit like, you know, the sort of psycho sort of thing, just into the sort of pull it towards you, put the plant in so it's going to be covered, and then just use your knuckles just to push it into the appropriate depth. Okay?
You don't have to sort of mess about with it. It's quite a quick action doing
All of
this.
you sort of gardening around
Yeah.
it and levelling out the soil after. As long as your site's reasonably level when you start off, all of this gardening superfluous action at the moment. What you want to do is get it in there, get them all in, and then you can move the soil around to tidy it up afterwards. When you've got your outside row in, I'll tell you then how we do the middle row. Not the middle, the middle part of it, the main ground row. This is relatively easy because they're going to go in at around about the same spacings as you did before, but they are not going to be regularly spaced in lines. I don't want to see any lines, crisscrosses, or indeed fractal patterns. Any other geometric or organically geometric patterns don't happen. It's got to be randomly distributed at an even spacing. Now I know that you'll all look at me now and think, no, can't be done. I just tell you, 27th time round standing in front of students that it can be done, and it will be done. It's nice and simple. What we do, you just have to put them in so they're around about the spacing. Don't worry too much at first, you're just dropping them in so that they're around about that spacing, make sure you don't put them too close to the edge. As we start to fill the bed up, you're going to do this yourselves in a moment. Some of them will be a little bit further apart than others. Rather than start shifting them about, what you generally do is you fill the bed up with your plants. You can maybe move a few around, but if you've got any big gaps, put an extra one in. Because what we want is we want a nice, somewhat randomised effect. It is better and more pleasing on the eye to do that. Okay? If you do them in lines, you're going to have one just a little bit out. It looks awful. And the whole effect does look awful. So you've got a grid pattern on there. And all it does is it accentuates the gaps between the plants. Whereas if you put them in as a randomised selection, the fact you've got your front line in means it looks tidy. And then you've got all these plants around it, behind it rather, which are roughly the same sort of spacing. Your eye doesn't start measuring them, it looks over them. It will only pay attention to this bed when the flowers are out. So it'll look over and it'll see the beauty of the shimmering flowers over the foliage. That's what the eye will be looking for. It won't be interested in, well, that one looks a little bit wider space in that one. If you've got a gap, it'll see it, which is why you're better off just spreading them out, spread out your allocation for the bed, and then just put a couple more in. Don't depot them until you come to plant them. Okay, and the planting for them is exactly the same as you've done before, so I don't need to illustrate it again. But you just take the pot off, see where it was, put it back down there, stab in, keep the pot on until you're ready to go.
And you can
Chuck
be
the pots to the
generous with
side,
these.
yeah.
Be
Chuck
generous.
the pots to the side and then collect them up afterwards. Don't be sort of like picking it up, turning round, putting the pot there, turning round. Where was this one again? Because you could have planted 3 in the time you messed about doing that, whereas if you just off, stab, in, push, off, stab, you'll soon get a rhythm going. You'll be through this in no time. You'll be thinking, I'm glad that I did what Mick said. Whereas if you decide to do something different, think, no, I'm going to do that bit where you turn round and carefully stack the pots. You're the ones who will be helping out at the end, and everyone else will be going, yeah, we don't mind. We really don't mind. So that's all there is to the next stage, okay? All clear? Planting the bulbs for dot plants. Bulbs, corms or tubers, we're going to look at these during your time so you know the difference between them. These are hyacinths and these are bulbs. Okay, just basically means they're a bud on a base plate. Now helpfully this is showing you just where it's starting to nose out to the top. We call this the snout or the nose of the bulb. This is the base plate at the bottom. Occasionally there's a few of last year's roots left on it. It's not properly cleaned up, this one. This papery bit around the outside is called the tunic. Now I don't care what you forget from that, I've just told you from now, but you must not forget that's the bottom, that's the top. And if you put it in upside down, it will not only will it not flower, it will start to produce new little bulbs around there and make like this thread-like grass like this. If it's warm enough, next year it's left in the ground. So what we have to do is get them in that way. Okay? Now, there's all sorts of different opinions on how deep you should put things. They kind of amount to the same thing. I often say do it twice the height. Let's use like the trowels I measure, 1, 2, almost up to the end. Other people say use the width, 1,
It's the
2.
same ready measurement.
Right? Okay? So there's not a lot of difference in it. Very long, thin bulbs, you're better off using the width. But the main thing is the top of this has to go under the surface. With hyacinth it's not really such a problem because they will come up, particularly if you've got good quality pre-prepared bulbs, they'll come up, they'll flower, they'll look impressive and they die down. If you put it in tulips, with the bed in, it's important that they go in the right sort of depth. The first year you may get away with it, but after that they form something called a dropper, which will either grow up in the soil or down in the soil to get them to the right depth that they prefer to be, and it will spend all its energy for 2, maybe 3 years making a new bulb underground, very slowly, and won't flower. You might get an odd leaf above the surface. So the depth of them can be really important, and indeed This time of the year you can make this thing called a bulb lysandria, where you put several different layers of bulbs all at the right depth, and they come up and successionally flower. In a pot, of course, don't do it in the ground.
Monty Don loves that.
Okay, so if you think about it, these hyacinth bulbs therefore, it's nice and easy. You've got to make a hole as deep as your trowel, and then that's got to go down to the bottom, the base plate. It has to be in contact with the soil, so when you put it, make the hole a bit bigger, put it in and just sort of screw it into the bottom, because that will make sure that it's in contact with the soil. You'll probably get some old books where it'll talk about things like put in a small bit of silver sand. When's the last time you went into a gardening centre or a DIY place and saw a bag of silver sand? Okay, so don't put it, that's the sort of a gold standard is not needed. If you just screw it in to the bottom gently, make it all right, it will be in contact. That will stimulate root formation straight away, and by the spring it will extend that little nose, come up with a flower, one hopes, and it will be an absolute delight. And we're only going to do these 2 long beds here. Okay, we'll leave the two square beds on the corners. We'll leave. Okay.